Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord, and welcome to another episode of The Shiny Review. Today we're going to be talking about the newest SSR to start off the 5th series, Meguru, as well as the limited Asahi and the event SSR Hiori. This episode of The Shiny Review has a bit of a visual update, so if you like it or dislike it, let us know in the comments and we can do some adjustments, or just go back to how things were. Just wanted to try something a little bit different for our newest SSR, and for a whole new SSR series. Without further ado, let's talk about Meguru. Starting off the 5th series of SSRs in shiny colors, Meguru arrives as our June bride of 2020. About 6 months ago, we started the 4th SSR series with Mono 4, and she quickly became one of the most popular units in the game due to her overwhelming power and consistent dual damage, along with an incredibly effective memory appeal. Meguru 5 operates as a dance visual version of Mono 4, but with one little bonus. She does have her weaknesses, however. The biggest change between Mono 4 and Meguru 5 is the introduction of more memory gauge manipulation through passives and other appeals. Much like Mono 4, Meguru 5 has no innate access to this, so she requires some dedicated supports to build that consistency. But she's a legitimate contender as a center and as a unit. I highly recommend that you pull for this Meguru if you are interested in running a limited, if you're interested in Illumination Stars, or if you just want to try out a dual stat unit. Her roles are center, buffer, and dual attacker. First off, Meguru's initial skill is a Dance Visual 2.0 that applies a 30% vocal buff for 3 turns. This can then link appeal into a vocal dance visual buff of 30% for 3 turns. At max, she gets access to a Dance Visual 3.0 appeal with a 50% vocal buff for 3 turns, and the accessible link appeal is a vocal dance visual 30% up for 5 turns. Her 1-star passive is a Dance Visual 40% up that requires an active vocal buff, as a 20% chance to activate 3 times. She also unlocks an additional plus 50 visual uncap at 1 star. At 2 stars, she gets a Dance Visual 60% up that requires a vocal active buff. This has a 20% chance to activate 3 times. And she also unlocks an additional Dance plus 50 uncap. At 3 stars, she gets access to 2 separate Dance Visual plus 50 uncaps, and her memory appeal when maxed out is a Dance Visual 1.5 that links into an additional Dance Visual 1.5. For support recommendations, first we have our high recommendations. Every support here is in high recommendations, so Limited Mono, Limited Hiori, Wanderlust Mamimi, the new Asahi, the recent Mei, and the Christmas Yuika. They all have natural synergy with Meguru's kit. Because Mono's Limited is the strongest of the trio of Illumination Stars, Meguru has the advantage over Mono 4 just by being able to run this support. As for some alternatives, we have the new event Hiori, the initial Fuyuko, Dance Rinzei, Dance Chiyoko, a vocal Kogane if you're going for multi-stat appeals, and as well as the visual Mamimi, and maybe even the SR Rinzei. For the alternatives, consider your best visual or dance supports depending on your focus. If you feel you need one stat over the other, you're free to distribute as you like. New Hiori is meant to tie in with this Meguru and is fine if you lack limited supports. The last two, Mamimi and Rinzei, are suggested just because of the SP bonuses that you might want to take advantage of if you feel that your SP generation is too low. As for team recommendations, this appears to be one of the most common setups, featuring Mono 4, Meguru 4, and Hiori 2. Focusing on Meguru being the center, we have this setup. Mono and Hiori can provide a reasonable amount of offense while also buffing up Meguru for a big finish. You might also opt to use Hiori 1 or Hiori 4 depending on your preference, and the same could go for Mono 2 or Mono 3. As for some additional members to have on the team, since you need 5 members, you could choose to take a more aggressive route if you have the option of using Asahi 2 and Mei 2, focusing more on AoE and more damage output rather than buffing. On the opposite side of the spectrum, if you just want more buffing, you could choose the tried and true combination of Rinzei 4 and Shoko 1, to aim for a more explosive turn 4 or 5 rather than more consistent damage across the board. Or, a more recent tactic that's been coming up and was actually very popular with Mono is a combination of Sakuya 4 and Kiriko 4, a more defensive style that focuses on stalling out the match to build up a memory appeal, and also has a better handle on AoE opponents due to the fact that they'll be raising the judge's defense temporarily, and can hit through it. Overall, Meguru as a center gets a double S, and yes, this means that Mono 4 is now technically double S as well. In some ways, Meguru is actually better than Mono 4, but it mostly depends on what supports you have. Dance Visual as a whole has a much stronger support lineup than Vocal Dance, assuming you don't have the limited Kogane SSR. Meguru's memory appeal is definitely up there in the damage department, so as long as you build correctly, it'll serve you nicely. As a unit, again, double S. The only reason this card isn't as strong as someone like Asahi 2 is because of the lack of memory gauge boosting. Not being able to consistently get your memory appeal is a pretty big deal in current Grade Fest, and it'll definitely take you several runs of TFD or preferably Grad before you're able to compensate for that. That all being said, this card is incredibly useful with a great lineup of buffs and skills, and again, I highly recommend that you pull for this card if you like Illumination Stars or just want to try something different with a strong unit. Next we have the limited support SSR of the banner, Asahi. Asahi arrives as the dance version of the Stray Light Limiteds, as we more or less figured would happen. The main things to keep in mind with this Asahi are, she has strong support skills, a very interesting defensive support appeal that scales, powerful passives, and she's a very consistent stat raiser. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and her unique support masteries are Unit Mastery Dance, which reaches plus 12 at level 70, Dance Mastery Dance Limit, which reaches plus 5 at level 75, Dance Mastery Stamina, which reaches level 5 at 75, as well as Event Boost. Now, we haven't had a chance to talk about Event Boost too often, but the main way to think of it is that it increases the likelihood of special event commus happening for your supports, which usually means that you'll be earning more stats. You don't necessarily have all of these events happen in one run, so having Event Boost means that it's much more likely that you'll find yourself with a lot more stats than usual. Much like a lot of the newer cards, Asahi has a scaling support appeal. At level 60, this is a Dance 3.0 that applies an Attention 5% down buff on yourself for 3 turns, and when maxed out at level 80, it becomes a Dance 3.0 that lowers your attention by 25% for 3 turns. Her TFD idea is Appeal, and her Insight token for Grad is Dance. Asahi's 1-star passive is a Dance 50% up that requires a visual active buff. This has a 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is a Dance 75% up that requires a Dance active buff. This has a 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 3-star uncap is a Dance plus 100, and her 4-star appeal is a Dance 3.0 that applies a Dance visual 10% buff for 5 turns and a Dance visual 5% buff for 10 turns. She also has a relatively strong event passive, which is unlocked after seeing a specific event commu during a run. This is a Dance 30% up that requires Asahi on your team. This has a 20% chance to activate 2 times max. Asahi gets a very clear double S. Much like how Mei's limited SSR eventually became core for a handful of teams, Asahi might very well do the same. While her support appeal scaling might not feel as impactful to you in wing runs, it will certainly assist grad runs a ton. She has an absolutely insane amount of value in her passives, along with a lovely assortment of support skills for all teams. I highly recommend that you pull for this card if you are running a dance team, want to run a Stray Light team in the future, or just want a very strong evergreen dance support. Lastly, we have the Event SSR Hiori. In typical fashion, Event Hiori intends to synergize with the latest Meguru by being a hybrid stat support in dance and visual. She's surprisingly a very solid event unit for this exact reason, boasting double stat masteries for 2 respective rooms, though they are inverted. You might remember the event Meguru from a while back that is essentially the same idea but vocal dance. This card is incredibly useful and versatile for all runs. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and her unique support skills are Dance Mastery Visual and Visual Mastery Dance, which reach plus 9 at level 80. And as always, as an event card, Hiori has a scaling support appeal. At level 60, this is a Dance Visual 1.6 times appeal, and at level 80, this is a Dance Visual 1.8 times appeal. It is worth mentioning that the limited Illumination Stars have support appeals that reach 2.0 for double stat. So this card, in theory, is not that much weaker as a support when it comes to providing damage in an audition. So you might find this card very useful if the cards that you drew aren't particularly good. Her TFD idea is Visual, and her Insight token for Grad is Visual. Hiori's 1-star passive is a Dance Visual 12% up that requires it to be turn 3 or earlier. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Dance Visual 20% up that requires your star count to be 9 or less. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a dual Dance Visual plus 50, and her 4-star appeal is a generic Dance Visual 2.0. Her event passive is a Dance Visual 4% up as long as Hiori's in the team, and it has a 40% chance to activate twice. Hiori receives somewhere between a B+ to an A-. I think this Hiori is best valued on players who lack SSR supports. Having access to a solid mix of room mastery can assist players struggling through Wing, and can even account for weird room setups in TFD. Her support appeal is great for dual stat runs, and also helps compensate for bad skill draws. A combined 40% gold passive is also not bad for the cards that can use it best, so pick up this Hiori if you can. And that's going to do it for the video today. Thank you so much as always for watching. If there's anything you'd like us to talk about in a future video, let us know in the comments. Either way, next time we'll be talking about whatever banner comes next, so let's look forward to it together. My name is Cho, thanks again for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.